the monthly meeting. Today's presenter is Neill Pawsey from Crossrail. Neill will be telling us about mobile IT implementation in the biggest construction project in Europe. Before I introduce today's agenda, I'd like to introduce those of you who are not members of Fiatech to who we are and what we do. Fiatech is a member-based organisation with an objective of accelerating the deployment of technology in the capital projects industry. We have nearly 100 member organisations and partners, including academia, subject matter experts and companies, the EPC, AEC world. We always welcome new members to participate in all our activities. In Fiatech, we strive to lead global development and adoption of new and innovative practice. Our goal is to do just that, and to be brief, nothing synthesises the value of our organisation better than the perspective and testimonials from our members. As Chuck, the CEO of HAL, succinctly said, that they joined Fiatech to network with professionals interested in taking definitive actions to overcome practical problems in capital projects. Fiatech is a great place for hearing of these initiatives and experiences of other members. HAL views their membership as forward-thinking and a strategic part of their business. In that regard, I'd like to mention Fiatech's annual conference and showcase, which takes place at the end of this month at Huntington Beach in California. Quite pertinent to mention, but the conference will have at least 11 presentations related to case studies of mobile IT implementation, in addition to the opportunity of meeting face-to-face with other members of the community, this community and Fiatech. The Tech Showcase is a fabulous opportunity to network and share information with like-minded people and organisations. Now, for today's meeting, give a brief introduction to the community, especially for those who missed our initial webinar last month. Then we'll move on to Neill Pawsey's presentation on implementing mobile tools across different sites in the Crossrail project within the UK. We'll then have a questions and answers session that will follow the presentation. As I mentioned before, your questions will be read during this section with your name, organisation and position to hopefully foster participation in the community. If you don't want your name reading out, then please say so in the question panel. After the presentation and questions, we will talk in more detail about the subgroups of this community and what we hope to achieve to advance knowledge on the implementation of mobile IT. We'll talk briefly about the context in which we're creating this community of interest. We'll then discuss the work we expect to do in the different subgroups. Okay, why mobile IT? At the core of Fiatech's interest, we are creating the mobile IT community of interest. Technology has significantly enhanced project information mobility for capital projects, but it's believed it's only scratched the surface. There are still many opportunities for the industry to increase its productivity through improved project information flow. As we've mentioned before, in Fiatech we strive to solve practical problems and the challenges associated to implementing mobile technologies, which are of a practical nature. We as a community hope to realise these potentials, and with your help we can make a real difference to this industry and increase productivity. The objective of the community of interest is to bring together project stakeholders to improve efficiency in the field of mobile IT and share that knowledge to implement those ideas across the industry. The community is a joint effort between Fiatech and Comet. Comet, for those of you that don't know, is a UK-based organisation whose principal aim is to learn from experience to deliver measurable benefit in terms of adoption of mobile technologies. Participants in this community will get together in two ways. First, through monthly meetings, such as this one, where all participants come together to learn about specific applications technologies and case studies. And second, participants will get together through subgroup meetings, which will focus on specific topics of interest to the community, and in which participants will carry out work inside their organisations to advance the knowledge on implementation of mobile systems. Importantly, the deliverable from the community developed by the subgroups will include reports, pilot tests and case studies of the work being carried out. These can give insight into the benefits, challenges and costs involved in the new technologies and applications. Furthermore, the work inside the community can become Fiatech-wide projects through formal project proposal. This would increase the scale of a given project and involve all Fiatech membership. Okay, so the subgroups. Participants in the community are encouraged to join the subgroups. The subgroups are expected to meet on their own and work in their organisations. Frequency of meetings will be defined by subgroup participants. The subgroup leaders are expected to coordinate such meetings and work. They are expected to briefly report their progress to the community at the beginning of the monthly meetings. Community organisers, which include industry experts such as Shania Averill, Todd Sutton, Fernando Mondragon, Ian Miskimim and myself, will provide guidance and support to subgroups. We'll provide the tools, documentation and will be involved in the work of the subgroups. Several participants have already indicated they're interested in becoming leaders. We need a response from other participants who are interested to get involved in the subgroups. So after the Q&A session, we'll have a brief poll to ask those of you who have not taken the survey yet about the interest you have and the different topics. Now we move on to today's main presentation. As I mentioned before, we've got Neill Pawsey from Crossrail. Neill leads the subject matter expert team at Crossrail to support the delivery of the project. This team provides a service to effectively manage, monitor, support and deliver timely, accurate information, including documents, data and models that are generated by the project. In addition, he leads Crossrail's BIM in Delivery Working Group, BIDWIG. This is a collaborative group comprising Crossrail project site teams, delivery partners and contractors. The group looks for innovative opportunities to ensure that project information is delivered effectively and its quality and integrity is not compromised as it passes between organisations and applications. For Neill, after spending 3 years in the British Army, he now has over 20 years' experience in the construction industry in a variety of challenging technical and leadership roles. He's focused on driving improved efficiencies through the use of innovative information management technology. He has a bachelor's degree in construction management from Anglia Ruskin University and a master's degree from Loughborough University. He's also a member of the UK's Chartered Institute of Building, the British Computer Society, and is co-chair of the Institute of Civil Engineers Information Systems panel. Neill, I will pass it over to you now.
Okay, thanks Stuart. Thanks for the invitation today. I've got a lot of ground to cover today and not a lot of time, so I will make progress. Stuart, I think I have control, is that right?
You do indeed.
Excellent. Okay. So first what I'd like to do is just give you an introduction to the Crossrail project. I don't want to take anything for granted, that you know everything about it. It's a large project. It's certainly well known in Europe. It might be less known around the world. I want to talk a little bit about our early progress around mobile technology in 2012. So really it's a chronology. Talk about what we achieved in 2013, and then I want to give you some examples of things that we're doing now and a little insight into some of the ideas we've got about the future. Okay, Crossrail is a new railway. It's a new route across the City of London, crossing from east to west. Some little statistics for you to make it interesting. It's split into two sections. There's an overground section which represents 99 kilometres of surface network. There are 21 kilometres of twin board tunnel through the city. that's the red section that you can see there, which is called central section. It represents probably 30% of the size and 70% of the cost and risk of the entire project, and that's the central section that I work within. There will be 37 stations on the overground surface network, and an interconnection with 8 subsurface stations or metro stations that exist within London, but this also involves the construction of brand new infrastructure, subterranean infrastructure. And also we want to create eyes on the future, one world-class railway. We often use a number of buzzwords in Crossrail, and one is that we want to create this new 23rd century or 22nd century asset that can be utilised and operated in a unique way. Just a little insight into how we're progressing. We're due to complete in 2018. The project tends to change every year. This year we seem to be transitioning from major civil engineering, which is the construction of the major tunnels, shafts and portals, and we're transitioning into station fit-out, which is mechanical, electrical and plant work. Soon we will be moving into system-wide rail systems fit-out, rolling stock depot, and moving into commissioning. So if you would to me in about 3 or 4 years' time, the project would look fundamentally very different. The highlights are that for a public sector project in the UK, we're quite rare. We are on budget and within 3 weeks of programme. So we were just subject to a halfway point review, and the government audit painted us in a very good light. But saying that, you should never be complacent. A long way to go. There's an awful lot of risk. Here's our scope map. I don't expect any of you
unmuted
in any detail, other than I'm trying to get across the message that it is a highly complex project. What you're seeing in front of you is in excess of 100 individual contracts and 36, or in the region of 36 live project sites across the city. So we have a huge supply chain to manage. We have a lot of complex interfaces to manage, which is where most of our risk is. So the idea of implementing consistent processes and systems across the project for us is vital. Okay. Just a little view actually of one of our project sites. This is Liverpool Street Station in the east of the city. It's over 200 million UK pounds worth of work just on its own. So there's lots of existing infrastructure here, existing metro lines, the yellow or the circle line, central line running through Liverpool Street Station, northern line infrastructure running through Moorgate Station, an overground First Capital Connect service that terminates in at Moorgate, an old post office railway which is now disused, and then the large blue asset that you can see in the ground there is our Crossrail station, one of our Crossrail stations, and that has to fit in amongst all that infrastructure. And I'm showing you a very simplistic layer of complexity. I'm not showing any of the utilities, water, gas services and existing infrastructure throughout the city. So we need to be managing our data not only consistently but extremely accurately. Okay. Just a few nice little pictures for you. We currently have 8 tunnel boring machines running underground through the City of London. Each one is about 10 to 20 million pounds worth of value on its own. Have to thread those TPMs through some pretty tight spots throughout the city. Here is an aerial view of one of our construction station sites at Bond Street Station. A lot of what you see, of those of you that have been lucky enough to come into London, you'll see a lot of activity above ground, but we're a bit like an iceberg. 2/3 of the activity is going on beneath people's feet, and the good news is that people don't even know it's going on. The little picture on the right here is of one of our ticket halls being formed in the ground. So a subterranean view of the aerial photo on the left. Here's some sprayed concrete lining works at one of our other stations at Tottenham Court Road, across the passages. An awful lot of sprayed concrete lining work going on throughout the city. Some other interesting aspects to talk to you about is that most of the excavated material that comes out of the city has to be recycled. some of that in an innovative way. So some of the material is kiln dried, turned back into concrete. The rest of it is shipped to 3 logistics sites around the city, put on a fleet of 9 ships, sailed down the river, and we're using the excavated material to create a new bird sanctuary, biggest in Europe. Okay, some interesting slides and pictures on the project. Hope it's given you a good introduction. This is our package workflow structure. Again, I don't expect you to look at that in any detail, but I just want to give you the view of complexity around the amount of information we need to manage. This is just a snapshot of some of the contracts across the project. This is entirely dynamic. Contracts come and go. There's some early design contracts here, and then we're moving into system-wide fit-out contracts and logistics contracts as the project progresses. So, let's get back to IT and mobility. Crossrail is an interesting entity. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of our ultimate owner operator, which is Transport for London. We were created by an Act of Parliament, UK Parliament, to deliver the project. So we're not quite an EPC, we're not quite an owner operator. So we're there ostensibly to deliver the project, which means we have a finite timescale. We will cease to exist in 2018, which has a significant leaning on our strategy with regard to the IT systems that we implement. The first one is that we have no customizations, because ultimately we have nothing to sell on to. We're not going to be moving many of our systems on to our owner operator, so we buy off the shelf typically. We don't build, or certainly this was our strategy back in 2012. We don't invent things. So a little review of things we learned in 2012 specific to mobile IT. We had a need to capture structured data that could then be consolidated. We needed to capture unstructured information, so things like photographs, signatures, free text. We needed to generate a documented record of all that data that was captured. In many cases we have no network coverage. Most of the work is going on underground. We are doing some early testing of wireless underground, but typically we have no network coverage, so most mobile applications need to have the capability to work offline. Also, when we do get into an area where we have connectivity, we want an auto-sync to occur, so we maximize or reduce the amount of latency we have in information flow. We wanted to be able to view documents from our EDMS system in the field for our field engineers. We wanted to utilize technologies like barcoding and latterly RFID. We wanted to capture field operative task lists and record progress in the field, so we wanted to capture information on form-based applications. We wanted to optimize our redlining process for capturing as-built information and the documentation associated with it in the field. But basically whatever we did had to make us more effective and efficient. And fundamentally because we have a target zero campaign where we just don't want to kill anybody on this project through until 2018, that whatever we do, it must be safe, mustn't bring harm to anybody. Things that we struggled with. Connection to core business applications, because many of our core business applications were not built with a mobile-first approach. Our managed service providers' ability in this area has proved problematic. You can tell this is an old slide because I've mentioned iOS 5 there, or iOS 7. We are principally an iOS house, although we are looking to make our apps more agnostic or platform agnostic, but we've had problems when various upgrades have come in, testing it, making sure it works okay, and then rolling it out. Things that worked but we thought were a bit clunky was SSL reverse proxy as a way of getting in a secure way into our networks. In fact, that's been a general problem really about how we punch holes through our security and pass data through that security and get to the systems we want. Things that we really liked, installing SSL certificates, trusting devices. There's some really great specialist third-party apps there that are off the shelf, some of which are free that we really like. But because of the nature of connectivity across the project, we wanted applications that really survived that open-close cover case or connections opening and closing, so they had to be fairly durable and resilient. So rather than saying what's coming up in 2013, what actually did occur in 2013 and what continues to occur is that we continue to work with our technical partners, and our principal technical partner is Bentley Systems. Whatever we do, we need to establish a robust business case for. Whatever we test, we need to decide whether we can plan for a program-wide exploitation, and then we want to implement it, we want to exploit it, and then ultimately we want to continue to report back on benefits. Stuart mentioned that I'm the co-chair of our BIM in Delivery Working Group. Our BIM in Delivery Working Group is really about our not business as usual part of what we do in Crossrail, the innovative side. That working group is split into a number of task groups, and one of those is our mobility task group. It's been running for over 2 years now. The purpose of that group really is to research, develop, trial, promote mobility tools, applications associated with it, associated communication technologies for all sites across the project, so that we can equip our field engineers with, and also our Tier 1 contractors engineers, with the adequate information they need in the field to make sure they're making the right decisions. 2 parts to it. One is in delivery, is really to develop and roll out that solution for the Crossrail team. And also a big part of it is knowledge share. We're also very big about legacy in Crossrail. We're very open. We realise that a project this size can leave a sizable legacy, can make a huge difference to the way that the industry operates, certainly in the UK, certainly within Europe, and certainly we'd like to have a global impact as well. So we want to share what we've done with the wider industry, and I suppose what I'm doing today is part of that. Our headline really at the moment is that some of the apps that we've been working on and doing early testing on are beginning to launch. We have a saying in the UK about London buses that you wait all year for one to arrive and then 5 arrive at once, and that's certainly been the case here. In my experience is that we've been doing a lot of hard work, and suddenly in the last month I've suddenly got 5 projects that I need to project manage that around mobility, and I'll be able to talk about some of those as I move on. Active mobile projects. Just talk about principles of what we actually do within our mobility task group. Is we follow a cycle that came out of the Commit organisation, actually, who we're also a member of. This cycle is very important to us, that we need to identify a need, so we need to be engaging with our contractor partners and also ourselves to find where the real problems are. We need to select the projects where we can find where those problems are and they need addressing. And the key part is probably down in the 4 o'clock position there, which is we need to understand the business value. So we write a business case. We need to know why we're doing it and what benefit we expect to see from it. We'll conduct that proof of concept. And that next important thing is down in the 8 o'clock position, is that we then refer back to our business case and measure the real impact. Did it deliver what we wanted? I think it's really interesting here is that often in industry, if you fail, if the trial fails, we tend to put it to bed and don't talk about it. But what we do in Crossrail is, obviously, if it's a success, we've then got to move into another phase of driving wider adoption. But if it fails, we're also trying to learn the lessons from that and store it in a knowledge base and share that within the project and outside the project as well. And I think it was Thomas Edison that said that he didn't discover one way of creating a light bulb, he discovered 99 ways not to, and that's kind of the principle that we follow. The first sort of thing we started to look at was mobile forms and data capture in the field, and there were a number of different processes in the field that we wanted to address. Observation reports, some of these will have some synergy hopefully with the audience today. Audit, surveillance reporting, shift reporting or site diaries, logistics control, asset management, snagging as we call it in the UK, or punchworks as we call it in the US, and the processing of technical queries and RFIs. The first thing we looked at was observation reports, and really here's our business problem. We have field engineers. They're out on site, they're doing quality inspections to make sure that what's being delivered there in terms of the physical asset is in conformance. They capture them during site visits. This was over a year ago when we were in sort of civil engineering phase, but they're about 50 per week per site. They have grown, they will grow, they have grown. As we move into MEP, we can see that figure going up to hundreds, maybe 200s per week. The result of these observations are then double-handed. So basically they're manually captured. The poor old field engineer has to walk back to the site office and manually enter them into a SharePoint database. So really we had 2 concerns. Again, this should resonate with some of you. In the latency between observation and it being recorded, therefore an action being generated from it, and the quality of the data being entered. So simply, we just wanted to remove that latency and allow the field-based staff to electronically record the outcome observations on a mobile device. And then by pressing a button, that's automatically uploaded to the MS SharePoint database once they have connectivity. We found a very simple off-the-shelf application for this initial test, and that was called Formotus, or Forms in Motion. Enabled us to very quickly knock up a reflection of our form that we use in SharePoint. All the simply enables you to do is record the information, apply a signature, take a photograph, and then the way it gets into our network and avoids some of the security issues we had is it sends it via an XML file in an email. There's some workflow at the back end once it's received in Microsoft Exchange, which promotes those fields into SharePoint, and literally within seconds from submitting the form, that that part of the SharePoint list is then populated. Other thing we have looked at in conjunction was really pushing our EDMS system out into the field. We use Enterprise Bridge from Bentley Systems. We have been working with Bentley for over a year now to develop an application called Field Supervisor. It's actually now available out on the App Store. We've now got our web services gateway connected into our EB system, and then we can access live data. So this enables a system to replicate what our field engineers do on paper, which is package information up, take it out onto site, reference it whilst on site, and then use digital forms to collect the information. So really what we're trying to do is build capability that we've learned in Formotus with the capability that we're building in Field Supervisor, and come up with one ubiquitous application that not only exposes our EDMS out to the field but also gives us some form capability. And we're currently still working with Bentley Systems on that, and we expect that application to be available within the next 1 to 2 months. But currently we're undergoing testing just of the read-only functionality of the Field Supervisor application itself. So what things did we learn? I'm going to touch on these in a little bit more detail, particularly health and safety, but we learned an awful lot just in the Formotus trial, which we ran for just 2 months on 2 sites with about 10 engineers. Was about user acceptance, particularly the hardware. We found that the engineers didn't particularly like the full-sized iPad devices. They liked the platform of the iPad mini. They could put it in the pockets of their safety trousers. That did present a problem where they were leaning against things and breaking them, but they really liked that size. That seems to be what we've learned in terms of hardware. Operating systems, yes, iOS is good, but we obviously wanted to develop apps that could be used across the project on multiple platforms. We learned an awful lot about the back-end IM strategy, about where we wanted to consolidate the data and how we got that information into our network, and a little bit about how we wanted to develop apps going forward, whether we wanted to go for a native or an HTML5 web type app. What we're actually looking at is probably a hybrid approach with a native container that enables the app to interact with the device, the functionality of the hardware, but to populate it with HTML5 type applications within that container. One particular thing I want to dwell on a little bit is health and safety. Across the project, our field engineers are beholden really to the policies of all our Tier 1 contractors, and as you would have seen from the scope map, that's an awful lot of them. And their health and safety policies vary wildly. Often they're based upon mobile phone usage, so sometimes there's a total ban and sometimes that's appropriate. Some contractors use what we call sheep pen approach, which is they have safe designated areas or zones with the project, often away from the point of activity where you can safely use a device. Or we think the more mature Tier 1 contractors are treating the device as a tool. They're providing appropriate training. They're recognising that the mobile device is not a mobile phone, and they're designing health and safety policies for the appropriate use of that tool. So here's an example health and safety policy that we've been trying to promote. So I won't go into too much detail, but basically the distinction here is that you're able to undertake your work at the point of activity, but only if you've been briefed to do so. If you're certified to do so, you mustn't use the tablet whilst walking. You must be stood still. You must be cognizant of what's going on around you. You must not use the tablet in a live working area. And basically, if a supervisor is nearby, indicates that it is unsafe for you to be using your device, you should obey their instructions. But fundamentally, our reasoning is that allowing a tablet device to be used this way recognises that there is very little difference between writing a comment in a book or a clipboard or on a form or walking around with a paper-based drawing, as well as typing or referencing information on a tablet device. Really, fundamentally, we believe there's no difference. Both those activities, so long as they're managed, they take place while we're standing still and in a place of safety, there should be no difference. But perhaps there is a recognition that there is a slight difference. Mobile devices can grab a little bit more of your attention. That perhaps means that when you're designing these devices, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you don't want your field engineers to be spending too much time interacting with the device, and maybe you should look for contextual aware information that if the device knows where you are, who you are, and your responsibility, you can pre-populate the forms with that information and therefore require you to put in the minimal amount of information as possible. But fundamentally, we're trying to sell the rationale that there is no difference between the old ways of working with paper, clipboards, books, drawings, as there is with mobile devices. We're also looking at personal protective equipment. I mentioned before that our engineers like the iPad mini and they tend to put them in their PPE trousers or the trouser pockets, but we're looking at waistcoats now, military grade waistcoats, and we're hoping to mock up a few of these that have a Velcro panel with a pouch that basically you can put your device in. So a waterproof cover that can then attach to the Velcro strap. There's an outward-facing panel with a hand strap. You can brand that how you like with a mobile aware logo or some safety information. That will help you to retrieve the device, and also when it's attached to the Velcro panel, it keeps your arms free at all time, so you can maintain your 3 points of contact when you're climbing, etc. And then you've got a lanyard, so that if the device falls away, it doesn't fall on the floor, it's still physically attached to you. Okay, moving on. Other mobile applications that we're looking at, or we're pushing out at this moment in time, we have a very simple drawing validation application. Uses a matrix code embedded on a drawing that allows the operative to view whether the information they're looking at is the most current. Simple green check or green tick and a red cross. It's a red cross, they know they're looking at an out-of-date version of the paper information. They should go and tear that up, print off a new copy. If it's green, then they can carry on using it. Very, very simple. Vehicle inspection system. We're pushing our GIS system of Crossrail maps out onto mobile devices. We're making SharePoint mobile through the SharePoint Plus system. Looking at 4D augmented reality. Talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And also using tags, matrix codes on temporary assets for logistics tracking and control. So a little bit about augmented reality. The BIM and Delivery Working Group has supported a Bechtel-led project to develop an augmented reality application. So it really gives us a process that can visualize project schedule data in the field using an application called Geneo. That enables us to publish 3D model data out into the cloud, and can then be augmented into the Geneo application. And the Geneo application, knowing where it is, if you look at the photograph bottom left, that's at our Bond Street Station site. In the early days for real-time location, that required us to actually physically place markers on the wall to allow the device to know where it was. We're now looking in the second phase around technology like edge recognition, etc., to improve that real-time location capability, and I'll talk about other ways of doing that. We're looking at Bluetooth low-energy beacons. So that trial, that phase 2 trial, will be undertaken this year. Early phase 1 testing was done last year, proved very successful. The engineers really liked it. We're looking at the capability to augment 3D with 4D, so we're looking at things like rebar modeling. You can look at a column, or you can look at a bit of rebar, complex rebar in the field, and see how that construction sequence is undertaken. The model you're seeing actually in the middle there is an HVAC model augmented over the station box down at Bond Street. Looking at mobile design and plan review, I remember when my Fiatech days working with Todd Sutton, I know he did a lot of work with Bluebeam Review. So we're trying to look at ways that we can do real-time annotation of project information and drawings, managing drawing sets on site, attaching and marking up RFIs, managing punch lists, attaching progress photos, etc. And there are a number of systems that we're looking at this year. The Blue Ronin product is something that came out of Imperial College here in London, developed by some master's students. Shows a lot of promise, so we'll be able to report back on that to the Fiatech membership in the coming year. Our Field Supervisor app enables us to push extensively 2D information out from our EDMS system out into the field, but we're very excited to look at the way we can utilise 3D model information out in the field. Done some early testing with 3D PDFs, some nice lightweight, sort of less than 5 meg versions, and what we found is the engineers really like them. They really engage with 3D information. Using Bentley's Navigator product and iModels, we have the capability further down the line later this year to publish 3D packaged information, and we did in this Chicago Bridge and Iron case study and this nuclear power plant where they were publishing over 8,000 of these iModels and creating them to generate iModel packages or 3D work packages based on construction area and discipline, and saw a lot of savings and success from that. So that's something we would certainly like to emulate at Crossrail. Stuart, I'm having some problems advancing the slide. I don't know whether you've taken back control.
No.
Don't know whether you could click that slide forward.
Yeah, sure.
We're coming towards the end anyway, so.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I think I can animate it from here. So the way this might work is that we can use Enterprise Bridge to create through virtual item groups sub-construction packages. We can issue those out as PDFs with an EB via the Field Supervisor app, so that will give our field engineers access to construction packages, drawing specs, inspection and test plans, forms to make field notes, and annotate and redline documents. But if we use Bentley's iModel Composer, we then have the capability to give access via the Navigator app to construction packages, 3D model views. You can then cut and slice and dice that 3D model in lots of powerful ways. So we're very, very excited about that. And as I said, the initial testing we did with 3D PDFs gives us some confidence that it will be well received. So that's something for later this year. I mentioned Bluetooth Low Energy beacons. This sort of came out of some early research. We looked into iBeacons from Apple. Real-time location is actually something we can use to augment some of the augmented reality trials, but also it's going to give us some basic capability to identify where people are, and from a health and safety perspective that they're not putting themselves in danger. So if the beacons can help us identify where people are, whether they're in areas, red zones where they shouldn't be, it could augment the hardware, shut it down. It could also augment applications within certain areas and only allow limited functionality in certain areas. So we see that as being quite a powerful tool for us, but we've got to develop a proof of concept. We've just received about £60,000 worth of funding from Crossrail's Innovation Fund to develop a basic web interface, the creation of zones from existing floor plans. We then want to develop a basic mobile application that can restrict or de-restrict device functionality based on demarcation of zones. We want to manage an initial site pilot which will take place very, very shortly to be conducted in a safe non-construction environment. So I'm talking about an office to establish some principles, and then manage a second phase pilot actually in one of the station boxes, and that's probably likely to be in Bond Street. So that's something we can report back on later this year. Mentioned matrix codes. We're using matrix codes and RFID to a lesser extent to label and tag our permanent assets that we'll hand over to our owner-operator. We also want to use matrix codes and similar technology for our temporary assets and also for logistics and supply chain. So we want to build capabilities or applications so that they can read tags and RFID codes on those assets, retrieve information that code links to within our asset information management system register, and then edit the status of an asset. This is an important precedent for us, because if we can get this working in construction, this is something that we could indeed pass on as a legacy to our owner-operator for maintenance, and we are certainly doing this work in conjunction with our owner-operators to try and see if we can de-risk some of the work that they're doing and give them an opportunity for the future. Coming towards the end now, it's very interesting in Crossrail that we are recognised more outside of the work of the project that we are within. I'm not sure what that says, but we were a recipient of a very prestigious UK BIM Construction Award last year, and we were recognised by Bentley Systems at the Be Inspired Awards for work we'd done around 4D modelling and augmented reality and mobile technology earlier this year. So we're very proud of the work that we're doing. It's a great innovative project. It's a very scary project as well, I might add, but there are things going on in this project that I've never seen done before, processes, principles, technology. So it's very exciting to be involved in such a great team, such a great project, and beginning to see some real results from some of the work that we're doing. So hopefully, Stuart, I'm on time and leaving enough time for some questions if there are any, but just wanted to thank you. I hope you all found that informative. As I said, this is not just sort of a one event report out. I hope that regularly we'll be able to come back to you and give you some insight into some of the things I've talked about today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Very informative. Thank you. I hope our audience participants found that as interesting as I did. Lots of nuggets there, lots of first-rate innovation, I would say. So, questions. I think I'll just run us through, questions. I've got a couple of questions have come in. I think they've actually come in anonymously. Let me just bring these up. Give me a second. Yeah, the first question I've got here, Neil, is, and this is an anonymous one. How much time did you spend in testing the app for the field supervisors?
Well, we spent an awful lot of time developing the functional requirements for it. We're right in the middle of doing the tests now. So it's sort of the legacy is really the stuff we did with 4 Motors. I mean, 4 Motors took a month on 2 sites. We're probably looking at 2 to 3 months of testing on 2 of our project sites. And then if that goes well, we're then looking to roll that out over a 6 to 8 month period across most of the major stations. So that could involve another 5 project sites. In terms of numbers, we're probably looking at a total rollout to over 100 field engineers by the end of the year.
Right. Okay. Thank you. The next question I've got here is beyond the direct improvements in the field, which improvements did you see in other instances of work, such as meetings and inspections? Did the people use their devices as a reference tool in a frequent manner? In other words, were they showing people what they were doing?
Yeah, some did, some didn't, is the honest answer. We have a very mixed constituency of our field engineers, and again, I think this may resonate with some people. Some of the younger engineers really understand the technology and they take to it very quickly, and in many ways they're very impatient to get it, and they tend to be the ones that are quite proud about showing it. We have an older generation who are very experienced, quite suspicious of the new technology, really do need a lot of convincing, have a fairly entrenched ways of working, and are finding that more difficult to adopt. The problem we have is that we kind of disappoint both of those constituencies in equal measure, if that makes sense. We kind of tread an interesting middle ground. We can't provide the technology fast enough for some, and we're upsetting some people by providing it in the first place. But we are seeing, in some cases, some of the older generation being won over, being convinced, and once they are won over, they become very, very passionate advocates, very powerful advocates, because of their experience and longevity on projects. They tend to be respected and looked up to. So really it's those guys that we really have the issues with convincing. But we are seeing, initially was anecdotal evidence, but we're seeing some real evidence now that there's some traction, there's some real pull.
Right, good. Well, thanks for that. I've got another question here about the field personnel that have received and used these devices. What are the backgrounds? What was their prior knowledge before they got these devices? And what did you train? How did you train them?
Training's always an interesting one. The backgrounds were mixed, but I mean, if you're field engineers, they are civil engineering background, and I've just sort of mentioned the mix in ages that we had. But training's an interesting one. We've tried to design these apps so that, if we have to spend a long time training them, then really we failed. They should be intuitive. So the amount of initial training that we're providing should be minimal. And because it's intuitive, we're then sort of targeting key people who then become the support in the field. So yes, we certainly want to produce things like quick reference guides, supporting training material, but we want to keep that to an absolute minimum. If you're producing an application that really just is no sense at all and is going to require a lot of effort to train, then I think you're going down the wrong path.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, I've got a few more questions coming here. The first question is from Manny Golpavar from University of Illinois.
Many.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very informative presentation. Are there opportunities for the research community to be engaged in this project, for example, in testing research prototype and assessing their potential for streamlining the workflows?
Simple answer, Manny. Yes. Give me a call. We're actually doing some testing already with research institutions that we have links with here in the UK. So talk to me, and I'll see what opportunities we have. One caveat I would say is that whatever we do, this isn't, you know, a playground. I don't mean that facetiously. Whatever we do by way of testing, we must not, absolutely must not affect the delivery of the project. So I have to say that.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Thank you. I hope that's answered the question, Manny. Next question I've got here is from Harold Mosley of Zachary. You mentioned that you used EB to develop work packages. Can you elaborate a little?
Yeah, a little. Yes, we again, it's because it's such a large project that the way that the work packages are agreed is dependent on the tier 1 contractor within each contract, if that makes sense. So the first thing we have to do is agree with the contractor the structure of that work package breakdown. Because our EB system is, we're trying to keep it consistent, we have a standard, what we call mandatory deliverables list, which is consistent across the project, which is the way that we want data to be stored. But we use a capability called virtual item groups, which is not sort of a duplication of the folder structure. It's just another representation of the folder structure, which can match that work package breakdown structure. Once we've agreed that with the contractor and set up those VIGs for each of the individual projects, we're then really ready to go, because it then packages the info. The MDLs are fine, but they're more about handover deliverables. They're not really about construction. So the work package breakdown structure really reflects the way we build things, so that we can then package information in a really powerful way. And really that's become an important prerequisite. Until we've agreed the VIG structure, we tend not to deploy the Field Supervisor app. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Great, thank you. The next question we've got here is coming from Curtis Rogers from McCarthy. Could you elaborate on the drawing verification application? What system is the app referencing? What devices are being used? Is it available outside of your project?
Yeah, okay, so the matrix code generation, we use ProjectWise for our CAD information management. We use that because it has what's called a British standard called BS 1192, which helps support our BIM structure in organising the data in a consistent way. The matrix code is produced as a layer within the 2D rendition, if you like, of the drawing. And that matches a suitability code that's published within the standard workflow within ProjectWise. We use, at the moment, the app is really designed for iPhones, and currently it's only restricted to within the project's use. But I know Bentley, that's a product that Bentley want to publish outside of the project for general distribution. I'm unaware what the status of that is. At the moment, it's early days. We've only just got that application working, and we need to roll it out right now. So, you know, you're looking at months away before I can report back on how successful it is. But it is very, very simple, because we've now got the web services gateway in and connecting to live data. We're beginning to roll it out to a few people. So a little bit of time yet before I can give you any more details.
Okay, thank you, Neil, for that one. The next one I've got is from Fran Raybuck. Fran's asked, are you using any mobile device management for security, software updates, device control?
Fran, yes, we are, and I'm struggling to, it's called AirWatch, is the application that our IT department use. It's important, actually. We have to keep our friends in IT on side, so anything that we do, any apps that we develop has to go through their testing, it then has to be published out via AirWatch to a standard suite of applications that we use. So that's the system we currently use. Whether it is the best one or not, I'm not best to judge. I'm sure Fran would be much better informed than I on that.
Okay, thanks, Neil, for that one. Thank you. Next question I've got is coming from Nikesh Kakar from Bechtel. How is access to these apps maintained?
Secure. I don't know whether that question is to do with security or whether that's just to do with the way we issue them out. But it's maintained by the IT department. So the request for the apps is made here. We'll develop them either with Bentley or we might develop them internally with our own app developers. So they go through sort of a rigorous process of development and testing before publishing it out. So maintained internally by our IT team.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Another question from Fran has just come in. Are you collecting info and data for sustainability metrics in UK SQL standard?
The answer is yes and no. It's not mandated within the project to do that, but I know some contractors are. In fact, I was down at our Paddington site yesterday and saw a very simple application being used to create a simple what we call a RAG report, red, amber, green report checklist for sustainability indexes. I don't think we have a standard across the project, Fran, but you can ask me offline and I'll be able to find out for you.
Okay, thank you, Neil, for that one. The next question I've got here is from Rob Braun from CH2M Hill. Are you using Formotus and Field Supervisor for field data form collection? If so, which app do you use for different purposes?
All familiar names. Rob, how are you? No, we use Formotus really just to do the proof of concept, so that was really there for a limited amount of time. We're really for form data capture and also pushing EDMS out into the field. We've gone for this ubiquitous development of augmenting our Field Supervisor application, so that will give us that sort of dual capability of pushing data out and having a form designer that we can use to apply form data collection in the field. So we really want that round one particular application. So Formotus was really used as a quick and dirty way of establishing the business benefits and then seeing if there was any merit in taking it further. Okay, thank you, Neil. We have no more questions that have come up immediately there. Phew. But thank you very much for struggled with that. Our participants for raising questions. That was great, and thank you, Neil, for answering those. We will make the responses available by return. We've got another question has come in while I was saying that. Damn. This is from Fran once again. Thank you, Fran. Do you use cloud services, Amazon, Dropbox, Autodesk, or is SharePoint your data store? That's a really good question, Fran, as always. We do use Dropbox. There is some consternation about our use of Dropbox at the moment. People love it, obviously, because it's a great way of exchanging data, but our IT department break out in a cold sweat because of some of the security issues. And I suspect we will move towards a more secure cloud-based information sharing application. I don't know which route we're going at the moment, but I can certainly find out. But yes, we do obviously still use SharePoint as well. Okay, thank you, Neil. Well, I'll say it again, no more questions there. Thank you very much for asking the questions, and thank you, Neil, for answering. I'll move on. I'll move on. If I can just get the next slide to come up. Here we are. So back to our discussion on subgroups. According to our survey results that we've got so far, these are the most popular topics among the respondents. Materials management, mobile hardware, mobile software, RFI, documentation in the field, and utilisation of BIM data. As we've mentioned, a number of participants have indicated their interest in becoming leaders of some of these subgroups. Please do let me know if you're interested so we can coordinate on this. We've got to consider people from different time zones so we can factor that into each particular group, but we will, as far as possible, accommodate your preference. The next thing I want to try and do here is run a poll so that we can capture that information. So bear with me a second while I try to launch this. Fernando, jump in here if you have anything to offer. I want to try and launch this poll.
and it doesn't seem to be working at my end.
Hold on, I think I can launch that myself.
Okay.
Hold on.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, a couple more seconds.
Okay, so please select just up to 3 options.
Up to 3 options, okay.
Yeah, we can do that, of course.
Okay, we've got 25% have voted. 30%, it's going up, it's going up. A couple more seconds. %50 have voted. Okay, I think we're just about there now. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to the next question since some of the people have already taken the survey online.
Okay, great.
And then here's the other question. Same thing, please select up to 3 options about topics that you would be interested in learning about without necessarily working on them directly.
Just while that's going on, Fernando, sharing the results, we do that through the email system to participants that have been on the call today. Is that correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay. And we will contact individuals that have shown interest.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to hand it over back to you. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Just while it's going on to the next screen, there we are. So we'll contact you about the subgroup formation once we've garnered that information and selected which groups the participants want to be involved in. One thing I will tell you is the next community meeting is set up for the 16th of April, so please put the date in your calendars. And for simplicity, what we've decided is that the 3rd Wednesday of each month, 9 AM US Central Time, -6 GMT, each month, and there's a list. There's a couple that actually clash with other events, so we've shunted forwards, but those are the dates to the end of the year. We'll possibly review the December one, so that's getting near Christmas, but that's what we've got so far. So interested participants, if you could set aside those dates, it'd be very much appreciated. The next thing I must say is thank you very much for everybody that came on the call today. Thank you very much for the survey information that we received so far. One thing I will lead you to is the subgroup that we've got going on LinkedIn, the Mobile IT Community of Interest. We hope to gather some ongoing discussion through that. It's already developed some activity, some interesting topics raised, discussed. Follow us through Twitter and like us on Facebook. There are some YouTube videos. There's a YouTube video of the Mobile IT Community of Interest webinar, and a short video that was compiled towards the back end of last year, giving a bit more description about the community that we're developing. I'd like to say thank you very much again for spending time with us today, and thanks very much to Neill for the presentation. Thanks to Shania, to Todd, Fernando and Ian. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you very much. Hello? Oh.
Stuart?
Hello?
I think you want to stop the recording.
Yeah. I'm just making sure that I've captured it in the right place. Just give me a second before I do any of that. Can you still see my screen?
No.
I'll give you a call in a second, Fernando. I'm going to shut this down. Okay?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, talk to you soon.